All right. So we're thrilled today for our first seminar series of the fall to welcome Skeena Knowledge Trust. Their mandate is knowledge management of information relating to salmon in the Skeena watershed. And we have Johanna Pfalz, Ekaterina, Daviel, and Lizzy Hoffman presenting. And thanks very much, you guys, and welcome. And we're going to pass the screen over to them. We'll see how that goes. Okay. Oh, and you have to unmute, Joe.
Okay, here we go. Just bounce back to the beginning here. Sorry, this might make you dizzy for a moment. Okay, how's that coming across? Okay, cool. I'm just going to move this Zoom window somewhere else. There we go. All right, well, thanks everyone for attending the seminar, and thanks to the BVRC for organizing this and allowing us an opportunity to present on our work. I'm Johanna Pfalz, and as Don mentioned, I'm here with Ekaterina, Daviel, and Lizzy Hoffman today to provide you with an update on the Skeena Knowledge Trust. So today we'll give you a quick overview and intro into what the trust is, why it was formed, and what some of our activities are. And then we'll go a bit more into detail on some of our programs and activities and our knowledge tools that we've created. And we're going to try and focus a lot on giving you some case studies of how these tools are being used by different community groups and First Nations organizations. So as Don mentioned, the trust was formed, the idea of the trust was formed back in 2009. There was a realization across the watershed that we really needed to know what salmon ecosystem information throughout the Skeena, what exists, and not only what's out there, but how that information is changing. And so basically how the landscape is changing over time. So back in 2009, the concept of the Skeena Knowledge Trust was formed at what was the Skeena Salmon Habitat Conference in Smithers. And this conference was held in response to the release of the Pacific Salmon Forum's final report and recommendations. That the report was actually released in February of 2009. That year, the Skeena River had record low sockeye returns, and at the point of the conference, which happened in September, there was still no response by government to the Pacific Salmon Forum's report. So people were concerned, and so this conference was formed to discuss the problem. And then in 2012, there was another conference that took place in Smithers called the Adding It All Up Conference, and this did focus a little bit more on knowledge management. And one of the results of that conference was that somebody needed to do something. We needed an information system for the Skeena watershed that addressed a lot of the knowledge issues. So in 2014, 5 of us established a governance establishment group. And again, this is sort of an outcome of another forum called Adding It On, Knowledge Management and Cumulative Effects Forum. And so 5 of us worked fairly hard for the next few years. And we're fortunate enough to secure some funding for from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. And that led to the formation of the Skeena Knowledge Trust, a signed agreement in 2017. We have 5 trustees. Our trustees are Greg Knox, Don Morgan, Dave DeWitt, William Elliott, and Ekaterina Connors. And then in 2018, we received charity status. So that goes a long way towards helping with fundraising. So that's sort of the snapshot of why and the timeline of how the trust was formed. And you can actually read a fair bit more detail if you're interested on our website, skeenatrust.ca. We have a fair bit of the history, and there's a really good video of Richard Overstall who talks a little bit more in depth about what a trust is in terms of a governance structure. So just to summarize some of the information management concerns that came up at some of these conferences that the Skeena Knowledge Trust is attempting to address is lack of accessibility to information across the Skeena, lack of data integration across organizations and across the watershed. There's lack of resources and tools by organizations to manage and store information, especially some of the smaller grassroots organizations. They just don't have the time or the resources to develop knowledge management tools. And there's no consolidated system to access the multiple sources of databases that are in existence today. So just as an example, if you were looking for information on salmon ecosystem in the Skeena, these are some of the different databases that you could potentially reach out to. Each of them has their own sort of login system, their own interface. And so although there's a lot of great resources out there, navigating those resources is a bit challenging. So as mentioned, we adopted a trust model for the Skeena Knowledge Trust. And the model essentially ensures that we have high quality, unbiased data that is gathered, stored, and disseminated in an objective and impartial manner. So we're a purpose trust. And again, if you're interested in a little bit more detail about what a trust is, I encourage you to check out our website at skeenatrust.ca and watch Richard's video. It's really quite informative. So our governance structure for the Skeena Knowledge Trust is actually of interest to other organizations as well across the province and the country as an example of a robust structure for information and knowledge governance. So recently, the Skeena Knowledge Trust was highlighted in a water governance dispatch case study that was released in December by the Polis Project on ecological governance. That's based out of the University of Victoria. So in this article, the SKT is featured as one of 3 places that demonstrate the characteristics of effective knowledge creation and sharing and action. So, and the other 2 are, just for your info, is the Coast Information Team and the Columbia Basin Water Monitoring Collaborative. So there's also a link to this article in the website if you are interested in reading through it. So we're really proud of the work that we've been doing and being recognized wider, on a provincial level for that. So in order to maximize the accessibility and the impact of high quality data relevant to Skeena salmon, the Skeena Knowledge Trust has developed 2 principal tools to carry out this mandate. It's called the Skeena Salmon Data Center. And then we also have developed the Skeena Maps portal. So the Skeena Salmon Data Center is a publicly accessible online data warehouse and library based on open source CCAN software. And it provides users with access to a comprehensive collection of relevant reports, data, and spatial files. And so currently there are over 857 public data sets in the Salmon Data Center, and that's about over 2,000 data resources. So the sister application, the Skeena Maps portal, was developed based on an open source GeoNode platform, and it allows users to search, view, and download spatial files, as well as create maps. So it has basic spatial data viewing and data querying and mapping abilities. So those are our two main knowledge tools. And before we sort of dive, Lizzy and Ekaterina are going to dive a little bit deeper into those tools. I just wanted to sort of summarize some of our activities and initiatives that we're doing. So a lot of our focus is on delivering workshops that focus on how to use the Skeena SemiData Center and the Skeena Maps portal. So we've been delivering workshops to a variety of different community organizations. And we've moved most of the delivery of those online, but we are still interested in delivering those. We also have an initiative called What's in My Watershed. So this was started last year as a means to engage the public and help them understand the information available to them in their watersheds. And I think to demonstrate this, I would just like to jump over to a different website here and just give you a demo of what these What's in My Watershed initiatives look like. Do I have to end this show? I can escape. Yeah, I can escape from that, I think. Here we are. Okay. So one of the things that we have noticed when we're working with these community organizations is that it's been great working with some of these community-based watershed organizations like the Seymour Lake Conservation Society or Tye Lake, helping them gather information resources for their watershed and adding that information into the SemiData Center. Excuse me. So that's great. But a lot of these organizations are just overwhelmed with having to synthesize information in order to take action in their watershed. So we thought it would be a really good idea to summarize some of the information relevant to their watersheds. So taking the information curation piece a little bit further. So in addition to adding the information into the SemiData Center and the mapping portal, we created these visualizations to sort of pull all that information together and summarize it for these groups. So here you see what we call a Tableau visualization for Seymour Lake watershed. Just gonna enlarge this a little bit. So you can see across the top here, we have 6 different tabs. The first tab is sort of an overview. It gives some lake metrics, quick map, reference map, and also a bit of an overview of some background of the watershed. And then if you look at the next tab, this provides a summary of the information. So this is a timeline of all the information that we have curated for this organization in the SemiData Center. So it gives you a really nice overview of what's happened when and what type of information is available. And so I think it's kind of cool because if you click on a link, it'll bounce you over to the SemiData Center and actually give you access to that report. So the two tools are kind of linked together. So it provides a summary. There's also some water chemistry information here. We have an interactive filter bar here where you can select your water parameter. I'll just pick one here, for example. You can select your water quality guideline that you're interested in querying. There's a wide range of different filters here that you could apply. And again, you know, if you're working with a community group and you are interested in knowing what is the latest water quality readings, this gives you a really easy access. So you can just select a data point and it'll tell you what the EMS number is and what the result is. So again, sort of puts information more at the fingertips of the end user. And then the fourth tab gives you a visual of where the water quality monitoring sites are. So these are all what are called EMS sites. So these are sites where the province has monitored water quality over the years. And then, again, just some more summaries of what has been sampled when, from which site. So this is what we call our What's in Your Watershed Visualizations initiative. And we are creating these visualizations for all the different groups that we're working with. So I think we're working with Tai Lake and it's Lake Hoffman. And Lake Kaplan, and hoping to go downriver and do something like this for all the different groups. And under further resources and references, another initiative that we have started this past year is working with this group called Water Rangers. So this is a citizen science initiative. Water Rangers has these very robust, easy to use water testing kits, and the Skeena Knowledge Trust has, we've purchased about 10 of these from the Water Rangers with some of our LUSH funding, and has been distributing them to local community groups. In collaboration with the BC Lake Stewardship Society. We worked with Marge this past summer, and she's been a great resource. She's so informative. And the idea here is to encourage people to do more water quality testing in their watersheds to promote citizen science. And we thought this was a really, you know, the Water Rangers program, we were really impressed with it because they have these really easy to use test kits. They also have a data platform that's really easy to use, and it shows you your results right away. So we thought that was really important. We found that a lot of people were doing water quality testing across their watersheds, but they weren't seeing any results for like 1, 2, sometimes 3 years. So that's, you know, we felt that there, you know, that timeline could be improved a lot. So I'm going to bounce back to my presentation now. I'm not sure why it keeps bouncing back there. Sorry about this. Here we are. Yeah, so as mentioned, these Water Rangers water quality test kits, they're very accurate, they're very easy to use. We're trying to push these out to local community groups to encourage citizen science. And we're working with the BC Lake Stewardship Society to try and integrate some of the information to ensure that everybody has timely access to information. So it kind of feels like a win-win. So I hope that has given you a quick overview of the Skeena Knowledge Trust, what we do, some of our programs and initiatives. And I'd like to turn it over now to Ekaterina, who will dive a little bit more into the SemiData Center. And yeah, she'll give you some really interesting case studies. So I'm going to switch seats here with Ekaterina.
Hello, everyone. As Johanna mentioned, I'm Ekaterina, and I will be doing a little bit more of a overview on the Skeena SemiData Center itself. So the Skeena SemiData Center is an online database, and you can access it at data.skeenasalmon.info. So I'm just, going to give a short introduction to what it is and then dive into a couple of examples. We'll see how the SKT has been using the Skeena SemiData Center to date. So as Johanna mentioned earlier, it is an online database portal, and it's based on open source CCAN software. So CCAN platform is a powerful data management system and is currently being used by a number of other agencies as well as the SKT. Some of these examples include DataBC, the Canadian Open Data Government Portal, City of Surrey, and many more. And it's being used to store, organize, and provide access to information. So the SKT developed the Skeena SemiData Center to address some of those information management needs that Johanna had mentioned earlier. So the main goals that we're using it for is to provide permanent storage of and public access to salmon-related data for the Skeena watershed. And this purpose is the primary purpose for addressing many of the information management concerns that Johanna summarized earlier. We're also using it to provide ongoing data management services for small organizations, hopefully avoid the loss of data over time, and also to support collaboration among researchers and partner organizations. So how does the Skeena SemiData Center perform these objectives? So essentially, we have been able to sort of develop four main functions within the Skeena SemiData Center. These functions are to use it as a library, as an archive, as a data hub, and as a data sharing platform. And these are the functions I will be demonstrating in a few minutes. So the library function supports the discoverability and access to information. It would functions as you might expect on a different library site. So it allows people to search information using keywords and search terms. It also provides an archive function and allows for the permanent storage of current and historical data so that information can be used by different groups over time. It extends the data life cycle and allows information to feed into new research as well as different management practices and assessment programs, that sort of thing. It functions as a data hub, and that allows us to pull related data sources together in one place. As Johanna mentioned, like we can often find information related to salmon sort of scattered across a number of ministries and organizations. So it's nice to be able to pull all those platforms together, especially where the data might be continually updated, so it's not just statically in there, it's linked to those other sources. And finally, the data sharing platform function supports data management, data sharing, and collaboration across a variety of organizations. So we're going to hop over to the SemiData Center. So you can either find it just by typing in the address, or if you go to the Skeena Knowledge Trust website, we have a link in here as well. So this is the landing page here. So you can see we have a data search box, as well as you can sort of browse data sets by category. Using one of the sort of general topics, we have the information organized by. So for my first example, showing the Skeena SemiData Center as a library, we're going to search for information related to the Bulkley River fish fence that operated in the 90s. So we just type in Bulkley fish fence into the search box. And you can see we do have quite a few reports in here. However, the first one is the one I was looking for. So you can see we have all these reports as PDF files, and they're arranged in this data set. It gives you a little bit of information about the program or the reports themselves. We have some key terms that we use to describe each data set, as well as metadata and information about the publishing organization. And then you can click on the individual resource, and it will bring you to the report. And because it's a PDF, we have a preview viewer that you can have a quick look at the report in here. And if you're interested in downloading it, you can click on go to the resource, and that will allow you to download the PDF to your computer. So essentially working as any sort of library application you might think. One example of how we're using the SemiData Center as an archive is with the Upper Bulkley water temperature data project. So for this one, we're working with the DFO and some contractors to house field data and raw data files. So again, we have each data set has a bit of information about the information that's housed there. And here we have a number of different kinds of files that we have housed. So each year has a plot showing the water temperature, has information on the site itself, as well as these spreadsheets that are just the raw data that people can download and integrate into research that they might be doing. And we also have, contact information if people are interested in using that data. One example of using the SemiData Center as a data hub is they mentioned being able to bring websites and different data portals together in one place. So one example that we found is with hydrology. So we found there's quite a few different organizations collecting information related to hydrology in the Skeena watershed. And so one way we can find how some of those information is by searching hydrology, and then we're able to filter down these sides by organization, category, tags, and also format. So if I filter hydrology by format, by HTML, so these are all live links to different web pages, and you can see we have, links to the Northeast Water Tool, different hydrometric stations operated by the province of BC, Aquarius web portal, groundwater information, and then the Water Survey of Canada hydro stations. So it's a really handy sort of one-stop shop to look for where you might find different hydrology information. in the area. And then my final example was using the SemiData Center as a data sharing platform. And going back to Johanna's example of the Seymour Lake Conservation Society. So we were able to make them a collection. So this is essentially a way of connecting data sets which are otherwise not really connected, because we have them sort of in different organizations. So you can see many of them are BC Ministry of Environment, but we also have a few of our own in there as well. And sometimes you can get, reports from DFO and different organizations. So the group really pulls together all those pieces in one place. And we're hoping that as we continue to work with the Seymour Lake group, that they will be able to upload their own information in here. If they have any supporting documentation or other, even news articles that they might want to share with the public, or be able to share the link to, that we will be able to house it in here as well. You can see we have a link to the What's in My Watershed visualization that Johanna showed you earlier. And we also have a link to the Water Rangers site. And similar to the PDF report I showed you earlier, you can just click through, go to the resource, and that will take you right to the web page specific to Seymour Lake. So it's a really handy sort of one location for discovering sort of all the information that we've been able to collect so far. So if you're watching this and you're really excited about how to get started with the SemiData Center, I recommend going over to our help pages. And we have in here some background information on how to use the SemiData Center, as well as different tips on how to filter, search results, and search for data, that sort of thing. We also have some information on our About page in here. And if you have other ideas on, how we can be using the SemiData Center, or if you have information that you think is missing, please feel free to send us an email. We're really keen to hear from you. So now, go back to the presentation. So just to wrap up my section, looking forward for next steps with the SemiData Center, we're hoping to explore connections with more live data, so information that's updated sort of daily or weekly. We want to continue to work with our collaborators to leverage the SemiData Center to meet their information management and data sharing needs. We'll continue populating the SemiData Center with datasets according to our annual knowledge plan, which outlines a prioritization process. And finally, we're hoping to continue to add different enhancements as funding allows. So I'd like to pass the presentation over to Lizzy Hoffman, who will be talking about the Skeena Maps portal.
Great, thanks Ekaterina, and hi everyone. So I'm Lizzy, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about our mapping platform, the Skeena Maps portal, and then just some ways that we've been using that lately. So the Skeena Maps portal is a web-based mapping system, and it's built with a open source software called GeoNode. You can access it at that link, maps.skeenasalmon.info, or by Googling it. And what this system is designed to allow users to do is to view and download spatial layers, and then explore and create interactive web maps. So we currently have quite a bit of data in the Skeena Maps portal that's mostly publicly accessible. A lot of that is provincially generated data. We have some federal government data, and then some layers that have been created through various projects that are being stored there. We also have a variety of maps that have been produced for different projects, and all of that data can be stored publicly or privately, depending on the project. And the overall goal of the system is to provide basic mapping capabilities for small organizations. So it's not a replacement for a full desktop GIS system, but it does provide the ability to combine spatial layers into maps and then share those. So going into the Skeena Maps portal, you can search for layers within our collection of publicly available data. You can go into any particular layer and view the layer's details and download the spatial data for most of them if you want to access that through a different GIS system. And then you can combine layers into interactive maps. You can save those maps and share the links, as well as looking at maps that have been created for other projects. Most of them are accessible. And then within each map, layers can be turned on and off, and that lets us put a lot of different data that might be of interest for a particular project into a map, and then let people turn layers on and off to view different combinations of the data. So that's kind of a really quick overview of what the Maps portal is for. And then I just want to talk a little bit about a couple of projects that we've done with it recently. So the first one is a map that we put together for the KLM LRMP Plan Implementation Committee. And they were looking for a map to help increase public engagement with the LRMP implementation process that would let the committee and also the public visualize current land use and then proposed changes within the plan areas, and then also help them work through an old growth management area co-location review process where there were some changes to those areas proposed, and they needed to review the proposed changes. So what they needed was a interactive map that could help them answer questions like, where on the landscape are these old growth management areas located? Where are various types of protected areas located in relation to those old growth management areas? What types of forest types, back zones, and site indices are those old growth management areas located in? So we put together a map that had a variety of different layers, some of the ones I've mentioned and some others, that could be turned on and off by the committee members or by other users, that allowed them to kind of explore the current land uses that are going on and how proposed changes would impact that. Another recent project that we did was putting together a map for a collaborative working group that was looking at potential ways to conserve high value areas in the Shideen and Shilagyo watersheds. And they needed an interactive map that would let them identify areas of high value, look at current habitat pressures, and then would help them with their communication and their decision-making process. So they were looking for a map that would help them answer questions like, where is high value habitat located on the landscape? And those pink polygons are identified high value grizzly bear habitat. What areas are already protected? So we added various different types of protection, like ungulate winter range and wildlife habitat areas, and parks and protected areas. And then where are areas of high and low timber values, and how are those located in relation to areas of high value habitat, and then protected areas and various other features. So this map, as well as the one that we made for the KLM area that I mentioned, allowed the users to host a interactive discussion of issues and support that with the spatial data so that they could hold a meeting with different stakeholders and then kind of use this map, move it around, zoom in and out, and then turn various features on and off and kind of support their discussion of the issues with that. It also let them share with collaborators remotely, so many users in different locations can look at the same map and have a discussion of that at the same time, which has become especially useful in our current circumstances. And then it also allowed them to increase public or stakeholder engagement by making the spatial data and mapping really kind of user-friendly and something that anyone can engage with. So those are kind of just some examples of ways that we've used the Maps portal in the last year or so. And then I also wanted to touch on some of the ways that we try and make connections between the Maps portal and the SemiData Center, and then some of the other platforms that we're working on as well. So we try to have these not be separate systems that have no connection, but instead have data kind of flow back and forth between them. So often when we have something like a spatial data set that's stored in the Maps portal, then it has some non-spatial data that's associated with that. So that might be, you know, PDF reports or a spreadsheet full of raw data or something similar. So on this Maps portal that was produced for one of the water monitoring projects that Ekaterina was mentioning, you can see down at the bottom there's a link to the SemiData Center, and that takes you to a SemiData Center data set that has some supplemental information that's metadata on that project. And then this has a link that goes back to the Maps portal. So just we're trying to kind of maintain those connections. And then on this map here, that View Map button will take you to the larger map viewer. That's what I was demonstrating earlier. And here, there's a variety of different points that indicate water monitoring stations, and each one of those has some associated attributes that include a URL that's a link back to the SemiData Center. So then that takes you to a data set that has data that's specific to that monitoring station. So we're just trying to kind of maintain the link so that spatial data and mapping connects directly back to metadata and reporting and raw data, and then that raw data and reporting links directly back to the spatial data. Yeah, so that's just kind of a really quick overview of what we've been up to with the Maps portal recently. And then we just have some future plans. So in terms of what we're looking forward to, we're looking at continuing to deliver workshops on the SemiData Center and the Skeena Maps portal to First Nations organizations, nonprofit community organizations, and the general public and anyone who's interested. We're looking at adding more resources relevant to current land use issues to both of our portals. Continuing to provide a bridging function to facilitate information-specific collaborations across the watershed. Expanding our water quality testing program that we're working on with the Water Rangers. Yeah, and I'd just like to thank our current sponsors, that's REFBC, Lush, Tides Canada, for the Full Circle Fund, Dragonfly Foundation, the Pickwood Community Forest, and the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. I think that's all we have, but I'd love to take any questions that anyone has. I wonder if I should stop sharing now.
Sure, yeah. Okay, very good idea.
Okay. Thanks so much, Lizzy. That's a fabulous presentation. The team has done an amazing job of collating that data and making that incredibly user-friendly and easy to access. And it's somebody who's not familiar with mapping and GIS, it's really interesting to see how you're keeping the links live and really usable. It's that was great. Thanks very much. All right, so we have definitely time for questions. If you'd like to ask a question, you're welcome to type it into the chat.